So this is part 2B. Part B of the Khoodeelaar television channel, world exclusive diagnosis of the British newspapers, also known as Fleet Street. And this is a rare recognition of the existence of the world. Threat to the world. The world is not recognized in the headlines of Fleet Street newspapers because the newspapers are published on the assumption that Little England is stupidly bigger than the rest of the world. So that's the lifting carbs. Lifting carbs poses threat to the world. And we shall read the couple of first paragraphs, let's say, of this one. George Parker is the political editor of the Financial Crimes, and Clive Cookson is not an editor, but Clive Cookson is a senior familiar writer, bearer and carrier of byline. So global health experts have condemned Boris Johnson lifting of most COVID-19 legal restrictions in England on Monday as a threat to the world, as daily case numbers in the UK rose to more than 50,000. The UK has the third highest number of cases of any country in the world. Only Indonesia and Brazil have more. And some scientists fear it could become a breeding ground for COVID variants. It meaning Britain, UK. Ministers have warned that daily cases could soon hit 100,000 and have in recent days shown mounting signs of nerves, as July 19, described by tabloid newspapers as Freedom Day, nears. Sajid Javid, Health Secretary, declared this month there was no going back. But now ministers admit restrictions may have to be reintroduced as they brace themselves for a spike in cases. Now, stupid Javid, that is the name we have given him, and we gave him in view of his complaint shortly after being appointed Home Secretary for the first time by Johnson. Was it Johnson or Theresa May? It was whoever made him the Home Secretary. We shall check that and we shall update accordingly. But essentially, the reason why we exclusively called Sajid Javid stupid Javid was because he was publicly complaining and using the wrong word. He was calling it left. He was saying the left was accusing him or branding him as Uncle Tom. And he said that it hurt him and it was unfair and that he was not behaving as an Uncle Tom or as the Uncle Tom. So in the first public response I made in my speech delivered at the Altavali Park in Whitechapel Road on the 4th of May 2018, and I said that if Javid complained that he was being called in Uncle Tom. Then the way to stop being called Uncle Tom was for him to stop behaving like Uncle Tom. Now this is the 18, 19, 20, 21 is a fourth calendar year. And the financial crimes in the headlined piece, lifting cars pose a threat to the world, quotes him as saying that he said in his current position as the Secretary of State instead of Matthew Hancock, that there was no going back, that the lifting of restrictions on Monday, that is 2 days from today, cannot be reversed, cannot be stopped. It has to be gone ahead with. But today's news that I have checked in the last hour shows that Javid has actually tested positive. Now, this is a man who has had 2 vaccines. It's very significant. And is also the holder of the post of Secretary of State in the Boris Johnson cabal fronted cabal of a government. So there is contradictions. Within hours of the Financial Times or Financial Crimes being printed, Javid was testing positive. So what happens when the Secretary of State, the cabinet minister, in the name of health, at the expense of health, is himself testing positive? It means that whatever his reason or excuse for saying that there is no going back is, of course, exposed as unacceptable, as unreliable. And so therefore, the adamant statement quoted, attributed to him in the Financial Crimes and other organs and publications, that there is no going back, is shallow and is dangerous and irresponsible. Now, the fact that in South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, the current president, is reportedly saying that unrest and looting were coordinated. That is not news. As I was saying in part A, the speech that Nelson Mandela gave in London as he stood at the balcony of the South African Embassy building called South Africa House, which is actually situated on the Trafalgar Square, literally on this Trafalgar Square. The speech, as I suffered it for evidence, didn't make any sense. So when the Financial Crime says that Nelson Mandela's dreams have been shattered by this looting and plundering and the riot. The Financial Times, Financial Crimes is talking absolute idiocy. Because Mandela that is, Mandela was too brainwashed in political terms while he was in the jail. And Mandela didn't have anything in the understanding of international relations and the international situations. And Mandela was not actually aware of the limitations in post-independence, post-colonial populations about morality, about ethics, and about the respect owed to the ordinary people in the country, just independent. And so when Mandela was in post, Mandela was being celebrated and feted as a propaganda kind of icon. Hardly anything was said by the West, said by the British or the American or any other so-called media about the fundamental defects that hampered the movement for a democratic, fair, and just society in South Africa after Mandela's release and after the end of the so-called apartheid. So we shall leave it there that the Financial Crimes is doing absolutely no service to the cause of democracy. And there was nothing in the period following Mandela's death. The various people who succeeded him in the post. The holders of the post, Zuma succeeded. The previous person who succeeded Mandela in an atmosphere of extreme corruption and violence. And Zuma has not been jailed. He has not gone to jail because of any conviction for any of the corruption that he has been involved in. Zuma has gone to jail as a stunt. And the stunt is based on the fact that he has been convicted of contempt of court. Something that is not the main issue. The fact that he has gone to jail for contempt of court and not for corruption, not for embezzlement, not for big theft with the Guptas and bribery with the Guptas, shows that the South African legal judicial system is itself bankrupt. So we shall talk more about South Africa later. Now here is a piece on page 12 of the Financial Times, Crimes, by a person who is described as the writer is chief executive of Runnymede Trust. Now remember, we have said that the Runnymede Trust is itself a corrupt, dishonest outfit. And this piece we shall be challenging. This piece in today's Financial Crimes, we shall be challenging it extensively. This is the piece. This is the piece which says on the heading, racial discrimination will plague the UK until government intervenes. Now this is stupid. This is stupid because of the heading itself is stupid. And also because the government will never intervene. Now, this is a piece dedicated to the praise of Gareth Southgate. And this is a piece written in the style, rhetorically translated, if you like, of a nephew or niece Tom. Because the Runnymede Trust is part of the kind of charitable kind of industry that are used to support the racist status quo by ingratiation. And this one is an ingratiating piece. It doesn't talk about the actual role played by the people in communities like the community in Tower Hamlets that took on the racists in 1978 and other communities across the country where racism has been only highlighted and actually opposed by the people concerned, not the government. Because the government intervention that this article is calling for is absolutely a contradictory kind of statement, because when Tony Sewers, we call Tony Sewers, his name is Tony Sewell, but we gave him the name Tony Sewers because of his swearing mentality shown in his hired, stooged kind of commission, so-called commission by the current incumbent, Boris Johnson, who said that there was no institutional racism. If there was no institutional racism in this country, then this headline is itself stupid. Racial discrimination will plague the UK until government intervenes. Then that shows that racial discrimination is present. And that is the case because the people who were attacking black players were representing the perpetration of racism in this country. England players were being booed by England fans. The only reason why those players were being booed and racistly condemned and blamed for the loss to the Germans was because they were black. All of these ones were, of course, African origin, but it makes no difference. They would have been targeted if they were Asian as well. And the Runnymede Trust itself is de-recognizing and denying the role played by the Bangladeshis in Brick Lane. This is full of references to other opponents of racism, but not Bangladeshis. So we shall be dealing with this. And when we deal with this, we will refer to the criminal lying and dishonesty by this Runnymede Trust, which published the report about Brick Lane and referred to Altavali, but completely left out the community. How dare these criminals do this? And so we shall be calling for the defunding of the Runnymede Trust, because it is a lying, racist denier of the role of the community in Tower Hamlets. Because it says, this writer says, as a child growing up in Tower Hamlets in the late 1980s. So she was growing up as a child a decade after Altavali and Ishaq Ali were murdered. A decade after we mobilized the most extensive diagnostic and advocacy against racism in Tower Hamlets. By the community that can be identified by ethnicity, nationality origins, and the context being that the racist murder of Altavali and Ishaq Ali was targeted at the Bangladeshi community. We shall talk more about that. This is like Yasmin Alibai Brown overly mentioning a man called Benjamin Zephaniah as her role model. Now, as far as I can see, Benjamin Zephaniah has never, ever made a coherent statement saying that he had even a full understanding of the Asian community's experience at being targeted by racists. So Benjamin Zephaniah is not somebody who is on the record as having understood or expressed any understanding of the racism aimed at the Asian community. And yet, Yasmin Alibai C has made dozens of references to Benjamin Zephaniah. Positive, approving references to Benjamin Zephaniah. And she has done that by denying the ongoing racist attacks aimed at the Asian community generally and at the Muslims in particular. Now here is Halima Begum, whose piece appears on page 12 of the Financial Crimes, claiming that she was growing up as a child in Tower Hamlets in the late 1980s. So late 1980s could be 1987, 88, 89, 90. 89, let's say. So that would be more than, that 89 would be more than 10 years since Altaf Ali and Ishaq Ali were murdered. Now Ishaq Ali was murdered in Hackney in July. This is the month July. And Altaf Ali was murdered on the 4th of May in Tower Hamlets. Okay, so we shall come back to the Runnymede Trust and its lying. So the existence of racism in Tower Hamlets, it has got worse. The tactics, the actual preponderance, and the various ways that racism operates or racism is applied in Tower Hamlets. And she doesn't say about Tower Hamlets which particular community she belongs to. So this is a syndrome that is embodied in the behavior and the role of Yasmin Alibai C. Now, Alibai C is not a member of the Muslim community, either as a Sunni or as a Shia. She is a member of the Aga Khan section, which is really not taken seriously by the Muslims because of various theological issues. And the Aga Khans, when they were kind of witnessed as a community, as a kind of secluded community in Dhaka, in East Pakistan, in the 1960s, they were treated as mainly a group of people, a culture that had landed from another planet. So Yasmin Ali Bai Brown hasn't got any basis to call herself a Hindu because she would be laughed out. And when she has a notional kind of identity as a quote Muslim, that identity couldn't be more kind of slender. So what she does is deny the main population of Muslims in Britain, let's say, who are Sunnis. And the second numerical group is, of course, the Shias. Okay, so we'll talk about Yasmin Ali Bai C and the Runnymede Trust. Look at this piece about Branson Bezos and the pointless space race. The Khoodeelaar campaign has said about Richard Branson that he is a serial criminal and he should be prosecuted for serious crimes. Serious crimes. He has embezzled funds, he has stolen billions of pounds under this pretext or that pretext, and he has been allowed to get billions of pounds that belong to the ordinary people in this country. And he has not produced any service to the people he has stolen. Now, against that background, his latest venture in the name of going to space, we condemn that because there are so many environmental issues on the planet in the UK that could be funded, could be addressed, could be tackled with the money that he has stolen and he has abused. So we said that. And by extrapolation, the same thing applies to Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Quite apart from this theft and the corruption, there is no need, scientifically, rationally, there is no need for any of these ventures into the space to be made by anyone, because enough research has been ongoing since the 1960s about the various technical issues involved. So there is no technical issues that are being newly kind of explored by any of these people. So they're wasting money and they're creating a gigantic stunt to deflect attention from their criminality. So we shall be talking more about that, but before ending that reference to the criminals, we say that there should not be any multi-billionaires anywhere. And there should be a limit, there should be a cap put on the acquisition of money and wealth by a single person. And whatever they have should be taken from them and treated as the national resource and used to solve problems of environmental decay and destruction and of poverty and lack of housing and other rights. We shall elaborate on those in due course, but that's the briefest way that we can kind of outline the response for the time being. And the financial crimes in the promotion of this so-called fashion designer, Phoebe Philo, is committing a crime by promoting her. And we say that the financial crimes is committing crimes in its supplements. And in the piece, the leading piece on front page, they are pointing out that the brazen defiance in the tone of the Boris Johnson fronted cabal about the restrictions has been replaced by caution, which means that even Boris Johnson knows that the COVID-19 is not only not over, but it is rampant and back. And they're saying that the so-called finance minister, Rishi Sunak, is effectively forced to find ways of raising tax in order to fund social care. So what we said in the last few days is that despite the gung-ho, boisterous bragging and boasting by Johnson and his ministers, they're going to stage U-turn, which they have begun to do. And this being Saturday, only Sunday is in between, it is absolutely the case that the boisterous, uncaring, daring resolution to lift all the restrictions would be fully reversed. So this piece by Patrick Coburn, in opinion on page 30 of the I newspaper, is in effect a rehash of the piece on Thursday carried in the New European by the editor-at-large of the New European, Alistair Campbell, whose piece was condemning Boris Johnson and calling him a pseudo-populist. And Patrick Coburn is saying that Russia and China were not the real enemies of the West or Western countries. It is populism which is a greater threat. And it's saying that populists play the cultural card more vigorously in times of trouble. And Patrick Coburn is citing the example of the riots in Northern Ireland, the latest riots. Now remember, Coburn is an Irish origin person. His father was Claude Coburn. Claude Coburn was a kind of socialist who in the 1930s published a very small publication, but it became influential because of the connections and sources in Whitehall. The newspaper was called The Week. And both his parents, Claude Coburn and his wife, collaborated, worked together in producing the Week. And it was full of winks and nudges about, at that time, about to happen Second World War. And a lot of British government ministers and employees were extensively involved and exposed as being too soft on the Nazis in Germany. So Patrick Coburn and his brothers have been journalists slightly kind of basing their credentials on the fact that their parents were who they were. And the Times today carries the news that actually refers to the populism. And this two-page piece in the Times today is another rejection of this stupid piece by Halima Begum in the Financial Times, where she says that government has to intervene. The government doesn't have to intervene. Because government is not in day-to-day control or charge of individual behavior. It's the various agencies of government that are on the ground and in charge of the day-to-day behavior. The maximum the government can do is a statement by the prime minister or a minister. That's it. They cannot intervene on day-to-day issues. So the local councils are the ones that are centrally involved and responsible for the day-to-day behavior of individuals, be it about racism, be it about football fans, be it about anything else, and the police. And in between, there are charitable organizations. So they are the ones that are failing to monitor, failing to observe, and failing to prevent racism, violations of civil liberties, breaches of all kinds that actually affect other people's freedom and liberty and safety and security of others. And this is not different from the orgy of looting and corruption that the Times is talking about in relation to South Africa. And this piece in the Times about the care home behaving like a gang of thugs. Care Farm made £24 million profit as Ofsted branded its children's homes inadequate. Now, everywhere you look, there is lack of competence and lack of function and lack of activities by those who are supposed to be on the ground doing the job of serving the people and delivering. Instead of delivering, these are found often to be behaving like gangsters. All right, there is this counselor from Oxford Council, and she has been quite effective in promoting herself as an anti-racist and as a Muslim woman football fan. Now, these are pages 22 and 23, where this counselor, Shaista Aziz, one of the 3 hijabi women, launching the petition to ban the racist Buddha footballers, to ban them for life. So it says there is no excuse how 3 hijabis took on racism. So that is where the actual kind of initiative should be on individuals and on groups like Councillor Shaista Aziz and her fellow friends that actually have been mobilizing to create a law that says that racists should be banned from football. Now, that is only an incomplete version, but that is at least in the correct direction. Because this piece is saying that Aziz's cousin had got in touch after the match to tell her that cheers she had been hearing through the open window from neighbors had morphed into racist tones, including the word nigger directed at the players. My hands are shaking as I write this, she wrote. Now, how could this be possible? These are three players in the England team that is actually should be credited for the goals that the team scored against Germany. What kind of sickness of the mind makes anyone attack them? And the police are in denial, of course, about the Rashford mural. And the Greater Manchester Police, who investigated and are still apparently investigating the vandalism of the Rashford mural in the Manchester area, should not have issued the statement saying that they don't think that the vandalism was racially motivated. Why? Because Rashford was one of the three black footballers of the team, England team, who were targeted for racist abuse, including being abused with the N word. So the role of the police is dysfunctional. Instead of saying that, which diffuses the anger and the outrage and the awareness about the prevalence of racism, they should have focused on taking action against racism, which relates to now that piece in the Financial Crimes by the Runnymede Trust saying that government action, government intervention. Now, if this is government intervention, then obviously it is going to make the opposite consequence. That is to say, it's going to aggravate racism rather than diffuse it, oppose it, end it, disgrace, and condemn it. So we shall be looking more at all of these issues in the next part